Welcome back to another tutorial here on Freewheel Photos, and we're back inside of ON1 Photo RAW editing a portrait from the street. Now, I'm no street photographer, but I was walking down the streets of New York in the summer of 2025, and I was just taking photos as I went, and this is one of those images. I literally have no idea where this is going to go or where this is going to end up. And I think that that's where a lot of people are with their photography. So let's go on an adventure together. Here we are inside of ON1 Photo RAW. And if you are a member, then you know you can go and download these files. And if you're not a member, consider joining so you can get these files as well as all of the ON1 metadata that I use so you can see what it is that I'm doing to these images. With that being said, we're going to go ahead and jump over to develop. This is straight out of camera, all right? Before and after. It's not really doing much of anything because I haven't done anything yet. Now, you could start with Bruins AI, and let's see what this gives us. So we'll just go ahead and select Bruins AI. This is the before, and this is after. This, in my opinion, it's just not giving me what I want. And so let's kind of tweak this by pulling on the slider. And yeah, I'm just not getting what I want. So I'm going to go ahead and turn that off, and we're going to do this manually. And that's okay because that's kind of the fun of photo editing. If the software does everything for you, then what are you doing, right? So here we are. We're going to go ahead and get rid of all of the color. That's the first thing that I like to do. And I'm just going to remove all of the color. And this allows me to really see the image for the bare bones of the exposure that I captured on the day. Now I'm going to hold down the J key. This shows me all of the areas that are blown out. And you can see I have a lot. Now, I don't have any dark blown out areas. They're all highlight blown out areas. And so what I can do is pull down on the highlights and see if I can recover those. So by pulling all the way down, I do recover all the highlights, but I feel like that just doesn't give me a very dynamic image. So I'm going to leave some of the highlights in, at least to the point where I know that I can go and recover these using a local adjustment. So I'm not overly concerned about those highlights. I want contrast in my photo. What I'm going to do next is let's play with the shadows. And for what I like to do, many people don't do this, but I like to just pull my shadows down. Again, I like contrast in my images. And so I'm just going to pull the shadows down. Now, for me, this gives me a good representation for me to start working with my camera profile. And I don't always do it this way. Sometimes I start with the camera profile, but today I just felt like I needed to deal with those glaring issues and then bring back some of that contrast. So we're going to come up here to profile, hit this drop down, and I just like to cycle through these. And I'm looking for something that's very contrasty. It's my own personal style, and this is street. It's supposed to be a little bit gritty in my opinion. So we're just going to go through these and see if we can find something that gives that. So I do like ON1 Vivid, also looks pretty good. And so I'll come down here to camera neutral and let's look at camera standard. Camera Vivid looks pretty good as well. And so I'll just cycle through some of the DCP files from my A6700 and yeah. So I think I'm going to go with camera Vivid, and that's not a profile that I use frequently. So I think that if there's some utility in this adventure that we're on is experiment. I say that a lot, but I don't showcase it enough. And so that's kind of the crux of this video today is just to showcase it because I literally have no idea if I'm even going to get a usable file out of this. And nonetheless, we're going to keep working here. So now that I have pretty decent contrast, I'm going to hold down the J key, see if I'm blowing out any shadows, and I'm not. So that tells me I can work a little bit harder on pulling my shadows down. And yeah, look at that. Just starting to bring out some real richness in this photo that really wasn't very rich to begin with. If I hold down the backslash key, it's kind of bland. Everything is, and we have some things that are brighter. And we're really starting to get some dimension in this photo. And that's what I like to do. And so we'll play with the midtone slider because I don't want to make this like crazy dark. And I use the midtone slider as kind of like a brightness adjustment. It's not going to impact my exposure. You'll notice that as I pull this up, things aren't blowing out. You will blow out if you pull it down just because of where the histogram was sitting. But for the most part, if I move my middle grays further to the right, I can almost go all the way and I still don't blow out things as much, right? So this is what I enjoy doing with the midtones, is just pulling them up to introduce light into the image, right? It's not for everyone. It's just my style. You let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. And now I like to work with contrast. So contrast is just like very aggressive separation. And I'm going pretty aggressive in my raw file here because I know that later on when I get into stylistic stuff, I usually go a little bit more subtle. So I'm giving this photo as much treatment as I can at the core raw pixel level, and then, or raw file level, I should say. And then when I get into local adjustment and effects, I'm probably going to push this a little bit more aggressively, or I'm sorry, less aggressively. Let's hold down the J key, see if I pull back on the exposure, we're getting more dimension, and I do like that. I'm okay if this photo goes a little dark because I know I can always just come down to my midtones and re-brighten it. So I don't want to spend a whole lot of time just trying to fine tune the raw adjustment, but know that if you want to have good styles on your images, spend some time on your raw adjustments, right? Now, I do need to add in some structure, and this is just a typical thing. Whenever you work with a raw image, it's always a good idea to add in some structure because raw data, it just doesn't have it, right? You can also add in some sharpening, but I like to add in structure and then I'll go down and add in sharpening either at the end or throughout the editing process, just depends, right? So now we'll go ahead and pull up on the haze slider. Let's hold down the J key, see if that's blowing anything out, and it's not. I think that this is like kind of an overcast day. I remember this day, it was a little overcast. So throwing in a little bit of haze actually goes with the atmosphere that was already present. What you could also do is go the opposite direction and dehaze, and you could see, look at all that information that is just being covered up by the atmosphere of the day. So you could go in either direction with this. You just have to choose what makes the most sense for the edit that you're going for. For our venture today, I think I'm just going to add in a little bit more haze because there really isn't any detail that I need to get in the background here, because I kind of feel like the subjects are right here, these two people passing by each other. So as long as they look good in the photo, I'm going to be all right with it. So we'll leave it like that. Okay. And so now it's time to reintroduce the color and work with the white balance. So I'm just going to double click on saturation. That's going to bring my color back to 0. And when you work this way, you typically end up with your color looking a little mucky, right? You can see that it doesn't look the greatest overall from what it looked like to where we are now. And that's because we really pushed those tones hard, but we didn't really pay attention to the color information because it just wasn't there. And that's okay. We can fix this on the back end. What I want to do is work with my temperature slider, and I'll try cooling it down, seeing if that looks good. And that really does complement well with the greens in this area here. But again, I'm not overly concerned about that area. Instead, I think this image would benefit from a little bit more of a warmer white balance. And so I think I'll go there. And then I think I may even increase the magentas just a little bit. I know that I like to say I go aggressive with my raw adjustments, but sometimes I do dial it back, right? It's all in proportion. So I think that that looks pretty good. Let's play with the vibrance. I think I need to add in some color and then maybe even pull back on the saturation. And this is a little bit different way for me to work, but I'm using the tools that are available to me to create as opposed to being locked into any one set. You must always do it this way, right? I hope that I never make anyone feel like you must always edit a certain way. So let's hold down the backslash key and let it go. And this is the after. We have a much more dynamic and contrasted image than what we had previously. And so I'm going to go ahead and minimize tone and color because I think we did all of the damage that was necessary for this particular image. Holding down the J key, You can see we still have some highlights that are blown out. We need to work those. So we're going to go ahead and click on noise and sharpening. And I want to work with sharpening. So I'm just going to click on classic down here, and that gives me the sharpening aspect. I don't really need to focus on noise. I'm not worried about noise in this image. I think that the noise actually adds character to the overall photo, so I'm not going to worry about denoising it. However, I am going to come down to sharpening, and I'm going to increase the amount here quite a bit, and then just back it down. And hopefully this is coming through on YouTube. If it's not, that's okay. Just know that you want to look at sharpening on your machine when you're editing your photos. And we'll just call it 42 and be good with it. Now, you can increase the threshold, and that's just going to tell ON1 where you want sharpening to go and where you don't want sharpening to go. I don't need it over the entire image, but I'm also okay with the threshold being low, because for this particular file, the sharpening isn't going crazy all over the place, and we're going to do some other editing, so it all buffs out in the end. All right, so this is the straight out of camera looking image, and this is after doing some develop adjustments. So now it's time to start working with the rest of the photo, and I think that cropping makes the most sense. And I know that if I crop, I could get rid of these light bulbs up here, but I kind of like the frame that I'm getting, showing that we're in this little underpass. So if I do crop, it's really just getting rid of some of this leading space, because I don't think that that's really helping to tell too much of the story. And I'm not sure I need this traffic light. So let's go ahead and hit the letter C to get the crop tool, and let's grab a 4:5, because I think that that's going to be a good ratio. I may change it later, but we'll see. So again, I want to keep the top portion of the file in frame. I'm just going to go ahead and pull over to get rid of that light and bring this back up into the frame. And then maybe even pull up from the bottom to get rid of some more information there. And I think that this looks about right. We're balancing the subjects down here on this bottom third line, and then we have some interest that's just happening up here at the top, and maybe we do need to pull this down to about there. So I do lose some of that information, and just for the sake of not having to deal with those highlights, I'm just going to get rid of all of this. And I feel like we still have the frame as long as I keep this top portion here, because I do want to frame her in this little underpass construction area. So we'll do it like that. Yeah, that feels a little bit more balanced overall. We do have this weird thing that's coming down here, but I'll live with that. All right, now we have the develop module complete, and we have our cropping complete. Let's jump into local and start working with really focusing the eye. And so first things first, I want to work with her as the subject. So I'm going to hit the plus icon. We're going to go with quick mask AI, and I'm going to hit add, and then let this analyze the photo. And then I'm going to select her and brighten her up. So we'll just hover over her, maybe click and drag. There we go. And then we'll select her bag, so her bag doesn't miss this adjustment, and we'll leave her just like so. Hit the blue check mark, so that way she's selected. And let's press the letter O, make sure, and it doesn't look like she was completely selected. All right, well, when that doesn't work, and we'll go with a brush. Add, and we'll just paint. Let's press the letter O, and let's get our overlay while painting, and then I'm just going to paint in green all over this person to make sure that we get her selected. So I'll fast forward through this. This is one of those reasons why you don't want to rely on AI for every single thing in your editing workflow, because sometimes it just doesn't work. So you got to know how to do it manually. Now, what we're going to do is increase her vibrance, her exposure. We'll hit Command and 0 to back out just a little bit, turning that off, turning that on. And I think that we have a pretty good exposure adjustment for her. Now, I think we need to do the same thing for this person here. And I'm not sure she needs as much exposure. So let's just create a new adjustment. So we'll go with brush, and I'm just going to quickly brush over her. Let's press the overlay, so that way I know that I'm going to get her. And then when I get to the edges, I'm just going to hit Command and R or Control and R if you're on a PC. And that gives me the perfect brush. And so as I paint around the edges, I'm not going to paint outside of her. So it's just a smarter brush of making a selection, and I really enjoy using it. I still use 100% feather when I do this to make sure that the edges that do go over blend in pretty decent, but I still get a pretty hard edge as well, maybe like so. And I'm not even sure I needed to do that, but I wanted to. All right, now I need to work with the rest of this image. So next thing that I'm going to do is go over here to gradient. I'm going to hit add, and then I'm going to go even darker. And what that does is it gives me a buildup from the darkest point at the bottom here into the actual subjects. And it's just a nice transition, so you don't have to rely on one gradient to do everything. Then I'm going to start working with the right side here. So we'll go plus, add in a new gradient. And this one, I'm just going to rotate and put it over here, and we'll darken down the exposure. Again, I'm going more subtle with these than what I would do with anything else. And then I'll probably even darken down this area on the left side. And I'll see if this negative exposure adjustment will help me. So using the new masking tools inside of the 2026 version of ON1, if I hover over masking, I can hit the plus icon, I can come down to gradient, and I can hit add. And now it's giving me a second gradient that I can apply to this side. And I could have used a reflected gradient, but I'm just going to use this one because I get a little bit more fidelity over that fade, if you will. And I can turn this independent. So if you use a reflected gradient, it's kind of like a parallel gradient. So you don't really get to move this independently. Well, with a regular gradient, I can move it independent from the other one. So that's the other reason why you would go this route. So let's go ahead and pull this in like so. And it's a little bit more subtle. Again, I want to be subtle with these adjustments. And so if I turn this off and turn it back on, you can see we're really just starting to hone in on, like, it's like tunnel vision. And I like that. Now, what I also want to do is pull down on the contrast of those, or maybe push up. Yeah, we'll push up on the contrast there. And then I'll pull down on the saturation. And this is for those edges, all right? Now, I don't need to fully desaturate it, but I want less color around the edges and more in the center, because then that just, again, is another way of helping our subjects pop off of the backdrop there. We're going to right click on this mask icon, and we're going to copy it. Then we're going to come up here to the top, and we're going to create a new mask. So we'll just use a brush, and then we'll go to masking, and I want to hover over this 3-line menu, and I want to paste in the mask that we just created. So when I paste that in, if I press the letter O, you can see we now have the subject. Well, I don't want her to be in this particular frame. So what I want to do is come to masking. We're going to click on the brush, and I'm just going to invert that. So now we're getting everything else except for her. And so what I can do now is come up to masking, add in a line mask. And so we'll just click subtract, because I want to subtract the line mask. We're just going to roughly outline this area here, and then I'm going to subtract everything outside of it. So we'll just click outside. So now we have just this area selected. All right, hit the blue check mark, and that looks phenomenal. What I need to do now is I actually need to fade this in using a gradient mask. And so I'm going to come up here to the masking, hit the 3-line menu, and then I'm going to click on gradient. I'm going to hit subtract for now and just rotate this from the top all the way down, and we will fade this in gradually, something like that. And so I think that that looks pretty good overall. So let's just go ahead and turn that off, turn it back on, and I think that we're good. So let's go up to layers. And if you're not familiar with this, if you expand your layers and then click this little arrow on the right side, you get these two little icons here. If you uncheck local adjustments, it turns off all of your local adjustments, so you can see how that's actually impacting the image. And I actually like what this is doing so far. So we're going to keep moving. I'm going to go ahead and minimize my layers again, and we'll come over to effects. And so I'm going to click on add filter, and let's start with the curve. We darken down everything. I want to make it a little bit warmer using a curve. And this is kind of a color grading move. You may or may not need to do this for your image, but I do want to do it for this one. So let's just go ahead and go something like that. I think that just that color grade move alone really does help elevate this image or take it to a different level. All right. So we're going to go add filter, click on color enhancer, and I want to move my color enhancer underneath the curve. And the reason I'm doing this is I want the colors to keep the warm tone that I just included with the curve, but I want to adjust the way that those colors are actually responding. And more so, I want to work with these greens. So we're going to go to the green channel, and I'm just going to saturate it, see what's happening. It's not really hitting that Lincoln Tunnel sign. And so I wonder if that is in the aquas, or yeah, the Lincoln Tunnel sign is in the aquas. And so I want to darken down that sign there. And then let's work with the greens now. And I think this is going to really hit those trees and this foliage right here. So maybe desaturate that a little bit, because I don't really need those in the image. They're not helping with anything. So we'll darken them down as well. And then we'll come to yellow, and I will saturate yellow. The reason, she has a yellow bag. And so I want to saturate that, and then maybe even push the yellows more towards an orange. And then the orange buildings in the background, let's work with those a little bit. Maybe make those a little bit more yellow, and we'll saturate them. So we start to get this different color profile, because again, we're warming things up with that curve. So if I were to turn off the curve, you can see we just have this more blue looking image, but with the curve, it's actually warming things up. And it's a very subtle approach. Again, I'm doing things very subtly here for a reason, but I think it works out pretty well. Now, what I think this overall image is missing, let me hold down the J key. Yeah. I think this image is really missing just some overall exposure. So let's add in a tone enhancer, and we will just increase using the curve, or we'll actually start with the tone. We'll just increase the exposure just a little bit, just enough to like make this image look a little bit more cheerful, because I don't want it to be like completely uncheerful. So let's go ahead and hold down the backslash key just to see where we started with. Here's where we started, and here is where we've gotten. If I hold down the J key, you can see we're only losing dark information, and I'm okay with that, because what I can do now, and this is why I wanted to use the tone enhancer, just saves me from having to use another curve. I can take the black point and just fade that up. So hold down the J key, fade that up until all of that stuff that we were missing just goes away, or the information that we were losing, it goes away. All right. And then I'll increase some detail here, maybe to about there, and we'll increase some clarity, just because again, this is a street photo. I'm not afraid of adding in a little bit of grit. All right. And so overall, I think that coming from this to something that looks like this is pretty good. Now, because we did a whole lot of processing, I think maybe a little bit of noise reduction won't hurt. So we'll jump back over to click on noise and sharpening. And what no noise AI is going to do is over reduce the noise, I think. So we'll let it think itself through and then see what that gives us. It does a pretty good job, I'm not going to lie, but I don't want it to get rid of all of that grain. I just wanted to remove some of it because of the processing that we've applied. It's just going to help make the photo look a little bit more clean and aesthetic. So I think that this looks pretty good from the before and the after. So let's go ahead and apply that, and then we will zoom out and take a look at the completed image. So here's what we came into ON1 Photo RAW with, and here is what we're leaving ON1 Photo RAW with. I think that this looks pretty good overall. Is it the best image? Absolutely not. But is it better than this? I think so. You let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. And if you got questions, please send them my way. I'll do my best to answer them. If you want to learn how to use ON1 Photo RAW, consider signing up for a training call with me. A link for that is in the description box below. If you want to get these files and take a look at them and tweak them to your heart's content, consider joining the Free Will Photos YouTube channel. right here, and you'll have access to all of that information. Until next time, I want you to stay inspired and keep creating. Peace.